Okay, morning everyone. So today we are going to have a review, and then this Thursday we're going to have a final, okay? And regarding to the review, let me just tell you what we are going to cover in the final. So if you go to your syllabus, so there's a table and tells you so the final is going to cover 4 chapters. This includes a chapter that explains how we calculate GDP. And then so it's also included a chapter that explains aggregate expenditure model. So in that chapter, we talk about macro relationship, like we talk about marginal propensity to consume, marginal propensity to save. We talk about the consumption function, and we also talk about the investment. And then so we are going to cover those 2 chapters we just studied in the last module, which include fiscal policy and monetary policy. And so in today's review, so in this final sample, so I only include questions from the last 2 chapters. Right? That means to prepare the final, you may want to look at the earlier sample questions from your midterm 2 and midterm 3 to see those questions that covers GDP and it covers macroeconomic relationships. Right? So let's just go through this question one by one. Right? Question one: what is the amount of surplus or deficit incurred in year 5 by the government shown in the table above? So in the table, so look at year 5. Government tax revenue is 325 billion. Government expenditure is 340. And then the so the expenditure exceeds revenue. So has the government is running a deficit. And how large is the deficit? So use this number minus this number. Okay, 340 minus 325. That gives you 15. Okay, answer is D. Question 2. So more than 9,000 layoffs will qualify for second 13 weeks round of expanded unemployment benefit under federal legislation signed by President Bush. The workers exhausted their first 13 weeks of extended benefit and will now be eligible for new benefit, which pay an average 293 weeks a week. So this happened in 2008. And actually, so in 2020 or in 2021, so we have a similar policy happen. Right? So as we learned earlier in the class, so because of the COVID pandemic, many people lost their job, right? And many business was closed. And then the government extend unemployment insurance benefit, just keep people afloat, keep business afloat, right? Okay, and then so in this example, unemployment benefit are considered part of, so unemployment benefit it itself is an automatic fiscal policy. But however, the extension is considered discretionary. So this extension is under the discretion of the president, right? So it only happened when the government or particularly the administration believe the economic recession is so deep and we must have some additional action, otherwise the economy is not going to survive, right? So the answer is D. Now go to 3. Fiscal policy includes, the answer is C. Okay, decision related to government expenditure on goods and service, the value of transfer payment and tax revenue. Okay, so this is 3. Right. So now go to 4. The largest source of revenue for the federal government is. So answer is A. So actually we have seen a pie chart that shows the source of government revenue and also how the government spend their tax revenue. Right? Please refer that part in your slides. But this is the basic facts. And by the way, here this is U.S. federal government, and this should be true for most modern economy. 5. The present value of government commitment to pay benefit minus present value of tax is called. So here it's called fiscal imbalance. Right? So actually we talk about the implicit liability. Right? So this benefit, so they must pay or they promise to pay. Okay? It's called implicit liability. And then the present value of tax, so that's all the tax revenue they can generate. Okay? And then the difference is called fiscal imbalance. Number 6, use above figure if full employment occurs at here. The economy is actually producing here. Then there is, so certainly we are exceeding the potential. We are in the inflationary gap, right? So this is in previous chapter. Now in this chapter, this is going to talk about surplus or deficit. And certainly we are going to have a surplus, right? Why is it going to be surplus? Because we are producing more than our potential can produce. What type of surplus is this? So actually this is called cyclical, right? This is due to business cycle. All right. Number 7, in the above figure, if the economy is initially at D here, government expenditure increase. Okay, so first of all, at D, what happens? We are in a recessionary gap. Now, if government expenditure increases, and then the economy is going to, so we are going to lift up this aggregate demand, right? And then, so naturally, the answer is going to be B. So it's going to move to here. All right. 8. Country has been in existence for only 2 years. In the first year, tax revenue was 1 million. Outlay, which means government expenditure, is 1.5 million. Second year, tax revenue 1.5, outlay is 2. At the end of second year, the total government debt. So the easiest way to look at is just find out total expenditure minus revenue. Total expenditure is 1.5 plus 2. And then the tax they can collect is 1 plus 1.5. So hence the answer is B. Okay. And here we simplify. We just ignore the interest rate. Just assume interest rate is 0. 9. The government begins year 1 with 25 billions of debt. Based on the information in the table, what is the amount of debt following year 2? Okay. So begin year 1, so here, when they start from here, so there's 25 billions of debt. Year 1, so the government is balanced, right? Tax revenue equal to government expenditure, and then no debt need. Year 2, tax revenue exceed expenditure by 5. So that's going to winding down the debt by 5, or pay off debt. Again, so here we just assume no interest payment. Okay, and hence at the end of the second year, the the debt will be 20, right? Because they can pay off 5 billions of debt. Number 10, the largest source of revenue. So this is the same question as before, okay? So its answer is D. 11, change in which of the following is included as part of fiscal policy? So the answer is A, right? So B, the quantity of money, that's called monetary policy. The level of interest rate also part of monetary policy. 12, in January 2013, Chinese government has approximately 1 trillion in US government debt. The Chinese government accumulated such a large amount of the US government debt because for the past decade, the US, so usually, so the government, like foreign government, so they can accumulate large debt is because they have a trade surplus, right? So what is trade surplus? Let's say US versus China. Trade surplus means for China, okay? So China export more than they import. That means so they earn a lot of US dollar, right? Because by selling goods to US, right? They earn more US dollar than they spend, right? So they use US dollar to import goods from US. And then which means they left a lot of cash, which is US dollar. And what they're going to do, they're going to invest in US market. And usually the safest way to invest is by US government debt or treasury bond. Okay, so that's how the trade deficit surplus link with a country's debt. Okay, so the answer here is A. Right? 13, in order for the US to repay its international debt. So this immediately follow question 12, right? And then so the US must run trade surplus, right? So then from the standpoint of view of the US, the US can earn more foreign currencies to pay off their debt, right? So the answer is D. 14, suppose the government of Japan increases expenditure on goods and service. In the short term, it will. So in the short term, it's going to help aggregate demand. It's going to lift up aggregate demand, right? So the answer is A. And actually, so you can just look at this figure, right? So if the government of Japan increase consumption expenditure, increase purchase of goods and service, this curve shift up, and then what happens is GDP is going to increase, price is going to increase, right? So this is 14. 15. An example of automatic fiscal policy is when, okay, so the answer is B. Tax revenue decrease as real GDP decrease. Okay? Think about the income tax. We have a rule, and you cannot do anything discretionary. All right, and the rest of 3, those are discretionary. Okay, it happens under certain circumstance. Right. 16, the use of discretionary fiscal policy to end a recession is limited. Okay, it's because the answer is A. Okay, remember, so we talk about 3 reasons why the fiscal policy can slow to respond. Okay, so 17, a discretionary fiscal policy is a fiscal policy that, right, so the answer is A, requires action. So here it says by the Congress. Essentially it means it requires action by the policymaker. Okay? And automatic fiscal policy doesn't need action from, or doesn't need additional action from the policymaker, like your income tax. Okay? Like unemployment insurance benefit. But the extension of unemployment insurance benefit, it requires additional action from the policymaker. 18. The stimulus package passed by Congress in 2009 to combat the recession is an example of, so you can change this to 2020, right? So you can see these things happens recurringly, right? So this is an example of discretionary fiscal policy. Okay. Now 19, in the above figure, if the economy is initially at D, oh, apologize, so the same questions, right? So we are going to move to A. Okay. Now you may wondering, or you may ask yourself, if the economy is originally in B, okay, if we are in B, now what the government is supposed to do, and how would that affect our economy? Okay, so usually if we are in a D, meaning we are in a inflationary gap, and then so the government want to cool down the economy, then they're going to reduce G or increase T. So that means you're going to bring down the aggregate demand. That means the economy is going to back to A. Okay. So, but here, so we are asking what happens if we are in D. Okay, so answer is A. Now 20, because of automatic fiscal policy, when real GDP decrease. Okay, so automatic fiscal policy, again, think about unemployment insurance benefit. Okay, and then when real GDP decrease, unemployment rate usually increase. And then, so what happens? The unemployment insurance benefit collected will increase, meaning expenditure, government expenditure will increase. Right? But at the same time, so the tax the government can collect will decrease because the real GDP or tax base decrease. So 20 answer is going to be A. Now 21, if the government outlay is 1.5 trillion, tax revenue is 2.2, then the government is running a surplus of 0.7, right? So for the U.S. economy, so this usually doesn't happen. It only happens for a few years during Clinton's administration. 22. The Employment Act of 1946 made it the responsibility of, okay, so you can ignore these questions, but if you are curious, so the answer is going to be D. Okay. 23. If tax exactly equal government outlay, and then so the budget deficit will be 0. Some students may tempted to say federal government debt would be 0. So why this is not correct? It is because you may have debt from previous government. Okay. Now 24. All of the following are part of fiscal policy except D. Okay. D is monetary policy. Now 25. Change in which of the following is included in part of fiscal policy? Tax rate, right? The other things is in monetary policy. Now 26. I think the same questions, but ask slightly different things. Let's see. The government begins year 1 with 25 billion debt. Oh, so now it asks you what happens following year 5. Okay. So what do you need to do? So we can repeat these, just have another practice. Find out each year what is surplus or deficit. So year 1 is 0. Year 2, so you have surplus, right? 5. And in year 3, you have surplus of 5. And then, so you have a deficit of 20. Then you have a deficit of 15. So that just means throughout these 5 years, so you need, okay, so first of all, these 3 years, the total surplus or deficit is going to be 5 plus 5 minus 20 minus 15 equal to minus 25. Okay, so throughout these 5 years, you have additional 25. You have additional 25 billions of deficit, meaning so you need to borrow additional 25 billion. With an original 25 billion, so now you're going to have 50 billion of government debt. Now 27, the government begins year 1 with 25. Oh, okay, so that's the same questions, right? After year 1. Right, so the same question. Because in year 1 you have 0 balance. And year 2, so you have 5 billions of surplus. You can pay off your debt. So you now end up with B. So 28, by definition, a government budget deficit is the situation that occurs when, okay, so this is the definition, right? So just go to D directly. Government outlay exceed what it receives in tax. What is outlay? Just government expenditure. Okay, so this is 28. 29, what is the amount of surplus or deficit incurred in year 5 by the government shown above? So that's straightforward, right? So you use expenditure minus tax revenue. So you have 15 billions of deficit. Okay. 30. The federal government debt is equal to, okay, so that's a good question. So the answer is A, sum of post debt deficit minus the sum of post debt surplus. How we understand that? So whenever you run a deficit, and then so you must borrow, so that is going to accumulate your debt. Whenever you have a surplus, meaning so you spend less than you received, and then so you can pay off your debt, and hence your total debt equal to your total deficit minus your total surplus, right? Again, because deficit you must finance with debt, which means you accumulate debt when you're running deficit, and surplus you can use to pay off your debt. 31. If the government runs a surplus, then the total amount of government debt is decreasing, right? Why? Because your surplus can help you to pay off your debt. 32. To eliminate the physical imbalance of government. To eliminate physical imbalance of government. Could. So the answer is C. Okay. So by lowering benefit or increasing tax revenue. So lowering benefit essentially just reduce the government spending. Increase tax revenue, that just increase their income. Right? So that's going to help them reduce deficit or increase surplus. That helps the government to dealing with their physical imbalance. What's physical imbalance? That just means so they promise spending exceed or tax revenue they can collect. Okay. So 33 is the same as before. So the answer is A. So let's skip that. 34. So this is the basic facts about the US economy. Again, so we have shown a figure or pie chart explain to you what are the major government outlet in the United States. So the answer for 34 is A, Medicare. What is Medicare? Medicare is the government-run health care program for elderly and disabled individuals, right? And over the long term, or if we look at future prediction, so the Medicare is so the size of Medicare as our total GDP will increase, okay, largely due to aging population and plus the rising healthcare costs. Okay. 35. In order for the United States to repay its international debt, the United States will need to, okay, so these are the same questions as we had before. Then the US must run a trade surplus. Okay. The answer is A. Oh, sorry, here, A. 36. General accounting doesn't investigate issue involves. Sorry, so you can ignore these questions. And the same for 37. Ignore this one. Now 38. So now this is more toward the monetary policy. If 1,000 is invested at 3% per year for 10 years, the investment grow to I think so. I apologize. So we did not talk about these. Let's just skip this one. Let's see. So a few questions probably we didn't talk too much. And here, so we skip this one. Apologize. So we can skip those 4 questions. Now we go to 40. The present value of government commitment to pay benefit minus present value of tax revenue is called, so we have seen this question before, is fiscal imbalance. And so next one, so in order for the US to have a surplus of export over import to repay its international debt, the US would need to, so how we can have a export surplus. And then so the way we can do is by decreasing consumption and increasing saving. Okay, so basically you don't want to buy too much goods, particularly from foreigner. 42. Okay, so we can skip this one, or 43. Okay, let's try this one. Comparing the physical imbalance for the current generation versus future generation, it is the case that so we didn't talk much about these generational physical burdens. Again, so we can skip this one, but the answer is A. Future generation pay a larger share of physical imbalance. Because largely because this is largely because the debt is going to accumulate, and also the debt is going to incur some interest payment. So that's why future generation is going to pay a larger share of physical imbalance. And that's why, so usually the headline news was very worried about the physical imbalance or debt issue. However, usually they miss an important aspect of our economy, which is economic growth. What that means, just look at the past. So we, like currently, our standard of living is more than 8 times compared our earlier generation, like 100 years ago, right? So our standard of living or our income is more than 8 times larger. Now, if we have the same debt, or if we are sharing a same amount of debt, and then to us it's nothing, but it's a much larger burden to our earlier generation or our ancestors, right? And similarly, so today, so we leave a debt legacy to our future generation or our children. But our future generation or our children, so they will enjoy a larger economy or higher GDP or higher standard of living. So then, so this debt burden may not be as big as we thought. Okay, so that's something important you may want to factor in when we talk about this debt. Okay, so 44 is the same. Let's just skip that and send. Okay, 45. Apologize, so because this just was generated by a software, so they may have lots of repetition. Okay. So this means the same questions. So let me just circle them. 46. Sam has 500 in travel check. He cashed $100 travel check, deposit 150 into his checking account, and deposit remaining 250 in the saving account. And immediately, okay, so that's the question test your understanding about M1 and M2, right? Okay, so the answer is C. So now, why the answer is C? So first of all, so what is M1? Okay. So M1, what is M1? Sorry, let me see. Yeah, so M1 include cash in circulation and plus your checking account, right? And then, so here, so the M1 is going to decrease. Why? Because he deposited 250 in saving account. Okay, but why M2 doesn't change is because so you decrease M1 by 250, but then so you increase your saving account by 250, so they just balance out. Okay, remember, so let's just draw a circle. So M1, you have two parts. One is currency or cash, the other is your deposit, okay, in checking account. What is M2? M2 includes M1, and then the other big chunk is saving deposit. Now in this example, so he started with 500 travel check. Okay, so that's already in M1. Now what he's going to do is, so cash in 100, then so the sum just goes to this cash, and then deposit 150 in checking account, then 150 goes here, and then so the rest of 250 goes to here, so this 250. So that's why, okay, so M1 is decreased by 250, but now saving account increased by 250. Okay, and then so if we look at M2, it doesn't change because M1 decreased by 250 and the saving increased by 250. So these two just cancel each other. But for M1, so it decreased by 250. Right. 47. If an economy has no money, then all transactions must be conducted through the use of, so we talk about that, it's called barter. So you use goods to exchange for other goods. Okay. 48. Financial innovation is called the development of new financial products and services. Okay. 49. The Bank of Japan is Japan's central bank. As part of its duty, the Bank of Japan would, so the answer is B. Okay, so if we switch this to Federal Reserve Bank, the answer is the same sense, right? So you just look at the textbook or slides to see what does central bank do. Okay. 50. The money base doesn't include, so answer is C. Okay, so just look at what does money based means, okay, in the slides. Now 51. The commercial bank has checking deposit of 4 million, reserve of 600, loans of 2.4 million. The desired reserve ratio is 10%. The bank has, okay, a question asks you what is the desired reservation and excess reservation. Okay, now to answer that question, first of all, find out what is required reservation. So required reservation should be 4 million times 10%, which equal to 400,000. So that's what required. Okay, but then so this bank has 600,000 of reserve, exceed this 400 by 200K, and then so we knew this excess reserve equal to 200,000. But what is the amount of desired reserve that equal to what is required? So answer is D. Okay. 52. If a customer deposited 10,000 in currency into a checking account, the bank's total reserve. Okay. So the bank's total reserve will increase, right? Because the bank has deposit, and then so deposit, so by requirement, so they must have some reserve. That corresponds to the increased deposit, right? So let's see what else. Okay, so all the answers are listed in at the end of the file. Okay, so please practice those things, and then also you need to look back into chapter 22 and 26. Okay. 22 is about the 22 is about the GDP, and 26 is about macro relation. There's a question from the students. What time will our final be on Thursday? So the time will be the same. So basically just during our regular class time. Okay, so what do you need to do? Just log into Zoom during our regular meeting time. Right, so and then so there's no class on next week. Okay, and we will wrap up this week basically. Chapter 22. So yeah, there's a question from students. Can we go over chapter 22? But which part do you want me to go over? Because so if you are not sure, so you can. So I would suggest you just go to the review 2 and the review 3. So both has been posted on online, right? So we have this review session for chapter 2 and chapter 22 and chapter 26. Okay. Other questions: is the bonus required? Not sure what do you mean. So bonus is bonus. So if you have answered the bonus quiz online, you should get your bonus. Okay. If you have any question, just shoot me an email. Back to the question. So regarding chapter 22, so that has been covered in our midterm too. And then so I would suggest you to go online. So because we have a YouTube channel for the class, and so go to review 2 and just watch that video quickly, because there are probably like 10 questions covers material in chapter 22, and you can do the same things for chapter 26, because that has been covered in midterm 3, right? Because both review 2 and review 3 both are on YouTube channel. Okay. Any other questions? But in the meantime, just feel free to write me an email, particularly regarding to your grade. Right? At the same time, I would ask you to do 2 things. To do me a favor. First, please just finish the post-test assessment. Right? So we need to collect those data to see to what extent our student learns. And additionally, I would appreciate if you can fill out online teaching evaluation, right? If there's no questions, and then so I leave the time for you, but certainties I will stay here and so answer any question you may have, and then wish you good luck with your final, and otherwise also I would wish you have safe and a pleasant summer, right? Hopefully see you guys on campus in person. Right, feel free to stop by my office in the fall. Okay, in the fall semester, I will teach the same class plus a grad class, and so my office is on the 3rd floor in the west wing. So that's the economics suite. Okay, you are welcome to stop by anytime. So next semester, all right? Thank you so much for taking class with me, and thank you. So again, so I will stay here if you have any questions, right?